Hi mathematicians, in today's activity we are going to review the two different methods we have for finding slope. And so problem number 1 is an example of slope from a graph. So I am a very visual person, so I always like to do it by doing a slope triangle. So remember what a slope triangle looks like. I'm going to use those two coordinates and I'm going to make myself a little pathway that makes a nice, you can see this right triangle that forms from the slope between those two coordinates. And all I need to do is count. And remember, this is what we're not going to count. We don't do 1, 2, 3, 4. We don't count the lines. To find the rise, we need to count the boxes. Kind of exactly like you would do a ruler. Like imagine this is 0, and then that would be 1, 2, 3. So the rise for this triangle is 3. And then if I count going across 1, 2, 3, 4, my run is 4. So remember how slope works, that you do your rise over your run. So that means this will be 3 over 4. And we also need to think about what direction it's moving in as well. So remember, the way you read a graph is you read it starting from the left-hand side and moving to the right. So what I like to do, because again, I'm a visual learner, don't make fun of my lousy drawing. I imagine right here on the left-hand side, I picture kind of like a little person that's over there on the left-hand side, and I ask myself, is this guy getting ready to slide down a slide, or is he getting ready to climb up a mountain? So you can see he is getting ready to slide down a slide. So that means that this slope is going to be a negative. So because that line is going down. So our final slope for number 1 is going to be a negative 3 over 4. Great, so take a second, pause the video, and take your best shot at drawing your own slope triangle on the paper. And then I'm going to do that for you in just a second. Okay, so hopefully you've paused the video, took a moment to try to calculate that slope yourself. And so I am going to use these two coordinates to draw myself my right triangle. And I'm going to count the boxes. So 1, 2, 3, 4 is my rise. 1, 2 is my run. So it's going to be 4 over 2. And we didn't have any simplifying to do in the last example, but this time we have some simplifying to do. So remember that the fraction bar is another way of saying division. And if you type in your calculator 4 divided by 2, you're going to get 2 for that slope. And now we need to decide whether or not this slope is positive or negative. So again, you always start reading it on the left-hand side. So imagine my little person down here on the left. This person is getting ready to climb up, right? So that means that this is going to be a positive slope. So that means that our final slope is going to be a positive 2. So I'm going to go ahead and skip ahead to the second half of the paper. And I just realized, I kind of skipped a little bit too far. I'm going to work problem number 14 on your paper. So find this one. So you're going to skip to that back page. And this time, we're not given a graph. Now, we could technically graph this, and then we could make a slope triangle, and we could do our rise over run. But remember, there is a shortcut for how we could do that, and that is using the slope formula. So in a coordinate, remember that x comes first and y comes second in a coordinate. And because this is the first coordinate written on the paper, this one is going to be your x1, and this is going to be your y1. And the reason for that is just because it's the first coordinate on your paper, and x comes first, y comes second. And then in our second coordinate, x still comes first, and y still comes second. But because this is the second coordinate on your paper, this will be an x2 and a y2. So to calculate the slope, we need to use the slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So we need to take the numbers that are given to us and substitute them into the formula. So I'm going to replace y2 with that positive 6. Minus is just part of the formula, so I'm just going to bring that over. My y1 is that positive 9 that's in that coordinate. I need my fraction bar. And then my x2 is going to be 5. Subtraction is just part of the formula. And then x1 is -1. So notice what we've got going on here with these two negatives, how we're doing 5 minus -5. So remember in elementary school, the big kid or the little kid word you had for subtraction was take away, and you're taking away a negative. So what happens if you take away a negative? Well, you're really making it a positive. So 5 minus -1 is exactly the same thing as, I'm going to rewrite this, as a 5. Sorry, I just lost my screen for a second. 5 plus 1. Okay, what some people do wrong sometimes is they'll say, oh, 5 plus a -1. There's no negative in there, okay? Those two negatives ended up making a positive. So I'm going to rewrite it like this. So now I'm just going to use my calculator. 6 minus 9 gives me -3. And then 5 plus 1 is 6. And I notice that 3 and 6 can both be divided by 3, which means I can simplify this. So it's going to be a -1/2 for the slope for number 14. All right, so for number 15, I'm going to remind you what the slope formula is. And I'm going to give you just a second to take your best educated guess about how to set that up. So pause the video and just try to take the numbers that you have in the problem and substitute it into that formula. I'm going to give you just a second to take your best shot at substituting in those numbers. And then I'll give you the answer in just a second. Alrighty, so hopefully you've gotten a minute to do that. So y2 is going to be that number 8 minus, that subtraction symbol is just part of the formula, so I'm going to bring that over. Oops, wrong color. Sorry about that, guys. y1 is going to be 5. The fraction bar is part of the formula. My x2 is going to be -2. Minus is just part of the formula. And last but not least, x1 is going to be -10. So just like I did the last time, notice again, I've got two back-to-back negatives. I've got minus a negative here. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this as -2 plus 10. And then I'm going to bring over the 8 minus 5. So 8 minus 5 is 3. Negative 2 plus 10 is 8. And there isn't a common factor between 3 and 8. That means I can't divide 3 and 8 by any of the same numbers. So that means for number 15, the slope is 3 over 8.